Greetings all. Today's segment would be over the segment of labor movements. The labor movement played a significant role in the history of the United States, emphasizing on the time frame of 1877 to 2016. This was more than just the working class going on strike or unions being formed. All types of individuals were involved, including everyone from different races, classes, and genders. Everyone fought for various rights through the labor force. These movements helped improve the work environment, allowing women and all races to work, and a set foundation for working laws in place now. We will divide these movements played out by 3 series separated by time period. First, we'll start off with the time period of 1877 to 1909. Series 1 focuses on labor strikes, unions, and the results of this. 1877 was the kickoff for labor movements. Those in the working class decided they had enough. They were placed in unsafe working conditions such as unreasonable long hours and many in unsafe areas, also receiving low wages for the amount of hours worked. The working class was looking to make a change. During this time, many went on strike until what was demanded was fulfilled. Examples of this include: a major movement of this time was the Great Railroad Strike of 1877. Perfect, just to kick off the time period. The railroad workers had cut wages due to the Panic of 1873 by 20%. When this started, it was on the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. It began to trickle out throughout the country. Think of the game Dominoes, perhaps. It started in Ohio and went all the way to San Francisco. This spread from east to west. This resulted for about 100,000 participants. This drew attention, and as it involved multiple states, and it was classified as the first official strike in the books. This strike was more than just workers not doing their job. There was vandalism and retaliation against the trains, rail yards, and any other property affiliated with the railroad. Due to this, at least 100 civilians died because of this. Think of looting and this was vandalism. So obviously the states took power into their own hands, and to calm the workers down, that's how the civilians died. Although this did end in violence, this influenced workers from across the country to fight for what is right. Many workers resonated with those a part of the railroad strike. This showed them they weren't alone. Other working class members saw this as something being able to relate to, since they weren't the only ones in unsafe working conditions. So seeing the strike be successful in a sense encouraged them to get unions and start getting on strike until what they wanted was deserved or put in place. Addressing the low wages, there was a woman named Kate Mullaney. Kate worked in a laundry facility, only earning $3 to $4 a week. Think of you in this position. Think of just being 19 years old and having to engage in long hours with little to no reward. And if you happen to make a mistake, you had no money for the week. So you were essentially working for free. How would you react if you had been in her shoes? I think we would all agree that we would simply not work. It would not be worth it. Kate recognized this. Kate recognized the wages were not sufficient for the labor that was being output, just as anyone would in this time as well. Kate began to organize a union and demanded higher wages. These women stood on their word until finally employers gave the wages demanded. Although this is just one of the many strikes and unions formed throughout this time, it is a prime example of how the working class was getting what they wanted. In order to get the wages these people wanted, they had to go on strike. So that meant for a certain amount of time, they weren't getting paid. But in their head, or in sense, it would be they would make more money in the long run, because these factories needed them in order to continue production. So just increasing the wages by 10-20% of what they were asking would be beneficial to everyone in the long run. The factories had their workers, the people were making their money. Everything was going well for the working class favor until the crisis of the 1890s. The economy was not doing so well. This caused for a decrease in wages. The working class began to struggle. They couldn't pay their dues, resulting in less members a part of the union, which led to weak unions. Although many would go on strike, it would not last very long because Any amount of money at this point was better than no money. So they would try to go on strike. It just would not last because these people needed the money. Also, throughout this period, the Department of Labor came to life. This happened on March 4th, 1913 by President Taft. The department was put into play as a way to have guidelines for improved working conditions and provide a better working environment. This was set in structure to help the working class, to no longer allow them to be exploited. On our next series, Series 2, which is where we focus on the period of 1910 to 1959. During this time, we see the peak of unions. Throughout this time, there were economical hardships, a war, and a Great Depression that followed the war, all which had impact on the unions, labor conditions, and labor rights. At the beginning of this era, we see what is classified as the deadliest industrial disasters in history, which was the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. There were 146 casualties, mainly made up of immigrant women. Some were as young as 14. A fire broke out, and because of the failure to not have the doors unlocked, these women were trapped inside. These doors were locked to prevent theft and unimproved breaks. So therefore, the women could not get out, causing them to burn in the fire. Also, the fire escapes were not up to code and ended up collapsing, so there was no way out for these women. Also, the first responders were unable to reach all the floors of the building, limiting their ability to help, causing the 146 casualties. This implemented laws for working condition, fire safety laws, and codes for businesses and factories to follow. After reading this, all this makes sense of when you're in a business and you see this door must remain unlocked during business hours. This tragedy explains why this is put into place. This allows the workers for if any incident were to happen, they're easily able to escape. This tragedy could have been prevented and had less death had the factory owners thought about the safety in their employees and played out every worst possible scenario. During this time, Roosevelt provided immense help to the unions. Although he may have not been directly affiliated with the unions, he passed the landmark legislation, which protected the unions. He also helped advocate for fair wages and a structure to working hours. There was also the Wagner Act in 1935. This gave workers the right to go on strike, partake in negotiations of their salary, and form unions. This allowed people to join the unions feeling protected, since Roosevelt had their back and this was now allowed. Because all of this, there were now guidelines employers had to follow in the sense of working conditions, paying adequate wages, and diminishing long, cruel hours. So, yeah. Because of the Great Depression, many businesses cut wages for their own benefit, but did not think of those employed. Once again, put yourself in this scenario. Imagine the country going through an economic hardship, so businesses began to raise prices and lower your wages. Now your cost of living has gone up, but your wage is consistently being cut. This is what these workers were facing during this era. Because all of this happening, unemployment rates were pretty high due to the low wages. People did not see it beneficial to work anymore. Roosevelt had the effort to get people back to working by putting these acts in place. Roosevelt wanted to lower the unemployment rate. This is why he consistently tried to push for fair wages and fair working environments. Overall, in this time period, we can see how unsafe the working conditions were and how a tragedy had to happen in order to start implementing the laws and codes. This was also not the only one. There were plenty of other casualties that happened. This was just a major one that made history with its large amount of casualties. With Roosevelt being in office, there was advocating for unions, there was advocation for better unions, better working environments, and fair wages. The labor movements were finally working, and there were guidelines for businesses and owners to follow. On to our last series, Series 3, focusing on the time period of 1960 to 2016. During this period, there were more advocacy to making sure everyone was getting the same treatment in the working field. The labor movements were now tied with civil rights. In 1968, 2 black sanitation workers were crushed to death inside a malfunctioning garbage truck. These men had been seeking shelter, but were turned away because of segregation. Their death enraged other sanitation workers who were also facing discrimination, low wages, and unsafe conditions. This led to a strike. This became a labor and civil rights movement led by Dr. King. During this time, there was also fights for discrimination, for not being discriminated based off of sexual orientation. This is where the Equality Act came to play, which added protection for the LGBTQ. This ensured they could not be discriminated against. As time goes, we see evolving labor movements. Since 1877, there has been a continuous battle for fair labor conditions and wages. We continue to see this evolve like we saw it evolve when including the civil rights, that no one should be discriminated against. As time goes on, these laws will be changed and altered for the better. As a society, we must all come together and accept change that fits us better. Thank you for listening to the podcast and hope it was informational as to how, over time, the labor movements have shaped the country's laws and codes to where they are now. Thank you.